Hello chums! UFO 50 is one of my favorite games ever, and because of that fact, it has made this video kind of hard to put into words. I wanted to make videos on this game since I played it for the first time a little bit less than a year ago, but a big problem there is that I kind of never really stopped playing it, because as I'm going to talk about, this package is probably some of the best value that you can get in games right now, and there is just hundreds of hours here. So it's kind of easy to get lost in that, but I finally played enough of the game to where I think I can at least try to talk about how I feel about it. And the entire reason this video exists in the first place is that UFO 50 is a game that has made me feel an entirely unique way, not only for it as a video game, but for video games as a whole, and it's something that I haven't really felt, especially a lot recently. And I want to try to articulate that feeling in this video by just talking about the game. In a more general sense, this is kind of just broadly talking about the entire package. I don't really consider this to be like a review or anything. I'm kind of just talking about my specific experience with UFO 50 and how I came to discover it and how it became one of my favorite games of all time. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that UFO 50 kind of reignited my love and passion for games in a much more substantial way than I thought it would. Because, you know, video game industry notoriously is not very good, and video games have always been a product, don't get me wrong, but especially in recent times, there's a number of examples you could point at how just business has made video games a lot more shallow, shall we say. You have the big battle royale boom where everything was trying to be Fortnite, and cut to today and everything is still trying to be Fortnite, and then Fortnite isn't even really Fortnite anymore. And like, that's not even touching on Tim Sweeney and the layoffs and the tongue bullshit, which isn't what this video is about. But all of that is to say that video games are kind of exhausting sometimes. And you know, part of that for me is obviously the fact that I've gotten older too. It's not just the industry, but it's how I look at video games also. I'm obviously not going to feel as passionate about video games now as I did as a child, although I still very much am. It's just in a much different way. And in summer 2025, I felt very bored of just games. I felt like there was nothing that I was super interested in outside of a few titles. And there was stuff that I was looking forward to, sure, but at the present moment, at that time, I felt very bored, because sometimes it's kind of just like that. You have this big library of games, any of them that you could play for tens of hours, but the choice of having to pick one of those games is so overwhelming that you don't do anything at all. So it's very ironic that a game that in and of itself is a compilation was exactly what I needed at the time. I will add in though also that technically I played Donkey Kong Bonanza first, because that came out in July, and that game also made me very happy about video games in its own way, but again, video's not about that, but I love that game too. But I discovered UFO 50 through a friend of mine, Grim, who streamed the game on Discord to me, and I had never seen it before somehow. I think it was shown in an indie showcase, like a Nintendo Direct thing that I didn't watch, so I hadn't even heard of the game. I knew it existed because I remember watching Jerma play fucking Paint Chasers and how it was like, oh, it's kind of like Splatoon, haha, Nintendo brain. But he basically just showed me around a bunch of the games and was explaining it to me, and in that maybe hour that he streamed that, I was essentially sold immediately, because the core concept of having a game compilation be the actual game and also having it be good is so impossible. By all accounts, a game like UFO 50 should be impossible and should not exist. But I thought on my birthday of all days that I would try out UFO 50 as a little treat. And it was then when I had discovered something that I can still hardly believe. Everything about how the game was presented, about how the game looked, how everything was organized, I was just hooked immediately. Well, I mean, immediately might be a bit of a strong word there. Admittedly, Barbuta is not the craziest introduction ever. But I took my time and went through all of the games one by one before really diving into any of them in depth. And I was hit with this aspect of the game that I hadn't even really known much about from what Grim showed me. But the in-world, like in-universe company UFO Soft was something that I found so interesting, and it wasn't even really something that I noticed at first. The default order that the games are in are chronological in release year in universe. And the game itself, UFO 50, is the final game that they ever made. And I obviously hadn't beaten any of the games yet, but in the credits you see like repeated names across a bunch of different projects and stuff, and even some new ones too. But it just like went further to establish that kind of presentation. The order that the games are set within UFO 50 kind of tells a story in and of itself. It shows how the games progress visually and gameplay wise, because the first game, Barbuta, is supposed to feel archaic on purpose. And then you get into later games and you see things like how the UFO splash screen, well, first of all, it's not even there at all. Then it's there in some of the earlier games. And then in the later games, it gets a whole animation to show that obviously the company has developed and things have changed. And this level of detail remains consistent across the entire package. I haven't even talked about the games yet, but UFO 50 is a collection of essentially this fictional company's history. Certain character designs and enemies reappear across games. Certain assets are reused. The compilation, to make it seem more believable, even contains sequels to games that exist that are similar enough to the originals but also different enough to warrant them being in the package. You're able to see the quality of the games improving over time and how certain ideas stick while others are abandoned. The Campanella series, for example, has 3 games in the package, as well as the Big Bell Race. Campanella 1 and the Big Bell Race both control very similarly, although they are different games. And this is because they were both pack-in titles for the LX3 system in universe. Campanella 2 takes some of these controls from the first game and Big Bell Race, but also becomes more of its own thing with like dungeon crawling, roguelike mechanics. And then Campanella 3 changes again and becomes Star Fox. And that's just touching on one series, which is 4 games in a package of 50. There are so many different games that take inspiration from real life games, all spanning so many different genres that it is really hard to wrap your fucking head around the fact that like one team made all of these. It was the fact that the games were so good and there was so much variety present in the package, along with how it was presented, that made me really just stop to appreciate what I was actually experiencing. Because I find that I can be very guilty of playing a game just for the sake of playing it, to just have something to entertain me and not much more. But with UFO 50, there was so much to dissect and appreciate and try to understand that I really couldn't think about anything else. With the scale of this game and how many of the games are about different genres that are inspired by real life experiences, I think it's impossible to see UFO 50 as something that isn't a love letter to video games as a whole. There were multiple times when I was playing the game where I was just maybe not even doing anything, maybe just sitting on the menu, maybe looking at the garden and seeing what was going on there, just thinking about how much love there was in this experience, about how impossible this is as a package to have 50 entire games in one at such an incredible value as it is, never mind if it goes on sale. And I mean, like, I'd be lying if I said I liked every single game in this package, because it's 50 games. You're gonna have preferences. There's some in here that I don't like as much as others, but I can still appreciate the entire thing. To me, the game just sort of stands for the idea of just having fun. One of the first things you see when you boot up the game is the splash screen that says play forever, which is obviously what the game is kind of about because it's 50 whole games. But I also felt that in a more metaphorical way as well, with how I feel this game has sort of redefined how I see video games. I have always loved video games, and I always will. And it was this experience that really helped me feel that love again, that really reignited that passion in me. Presenting the package as like the last remnant of a defunct company that was archived by a bunch of people really helps to give the game a feeling of discovering this whole like forgotten subsection of gaming. You become a fan of UFO Soft by playing all of the games, seeing certain ideas or motifs appear throughout the 50 games, and trying to think, about what it all means, and with the ARG within the game, that rabbit hole only becomes bigger. UFO 50, I think, is plainly one of the best games that has ever been made. It came to me at the perfect time, and through literally everything that it did, it gave me a lens to see video games through again that I feel like I had lost for a little bit. Maybe it was the discovery of playing the next game or uncovering the mystery behind the company, or maybe it was just the ability to sit down and actually appreciate what I was experiencing, to just sit there and appreciate what I was playing. Because video games are an art form, and so much goes into any project, even the most simplest of ones, but especially into video games like this. It is a monument to what incredible things can happen if you just get the right people together to make an experience, and it is also a monument to just how fun video games can be. Not every game in the package is perfect by any means, but to me, UFO 50 is.